Greetings, gardeners. Welcome to Bill's Nursery. Periodically, I've done videos about making cuttings of grapevines and passion vines, hibiscus and so on, lavender, and I usually just do the beginning process where we take the plants, we cut them, we strike the pieces, and we grow them out. I've seldom gone to step two. Step two is where the cuttings have now rooted, and you're going to knock them out of the original containers and go ahead and do a transplanting. So I get a lot of questions about this. I thought I had it covered when I'd say, well, tug, and when they're well rooted, blah, 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 it's time to transplant. But let's go through the process. I do happen to have some cuttings down here. I don't think I have any passion vines or hibiscus at the moment, which is what the questions were on. But the principle's the same, no matter what the cutting, really. So let's take a look down here on the floor and see what I have that we can work with. I can get a group of stuff down here. It looks like I've got some amethyst plant there. It's growing nicely. Now, one reason I know that that black purple looking guy down there is ready is because I see lots and lots of shoots coming up and off of it. They looked pretty sad shortly after striking them. It was warm and sunny and the cuttings drooped and a lot of leaves turned bad and fell off. But now I'm getting nice fresh emergence, and so they have to be rooting. Back over here I've got some water lemon, or Passiflora Ligularia. That's a new one for me. I have not grown this plant before. I ran across it while consulting up in Hamakua. It was on the wild through a drainage. I brought it home with me and struck some cuttings, and they are also beginning to take off. I know that because there is growth shooting out to the ends of the stalks. Over here I have some rosemary, and these rosemary are definitely rooted. So let's just have a look at this stuff here closely. Alright, to begin with, we see all this nice new growth emerging. That says a lot. Okay. Then we go underneath the pot, and you can see there are little white roots emerging out of the bottom of the container here on this lump of potting soil that drained out. That is also telling me the story. On the inside of this container, these cuttings are already pushing roots. This is probably about ready. It's close. Okay. Right here I've got my water lemon cuttings, and you can see the big long droopy tendrils hanging off this. None of that stuff was on there when I struck these. These were just cut to sticks. And so this is definitely going somewhere. There we go. It's minimal, but there are roots coming out of the drain hole. It's not enough because this drain hole doesn't really show but a tiny root. I don't see very much in this one, and so these can go back and root for a little while. Chances are if I pulled them out of there, they'd probably grow and take, but they're going to be a little stronger if I wait. These rosemary, I know, have been around here for a while. It's just a time factor. And I know they are very well rooted in these containers. Oh my goodness. Oh, look at all that. There's roots coming out of this thing everywhere. We're probably going to have to root prune these, okay? So, and you can see it's got a lot of nice growth on top. You can see where originally I clipped off the stems. And so everything above that is brand new. Yep. These are ready to rock and roll. So, signs that show in growth and foliage, definitely something to look for. Looking for the roots out the drain holes. And the other one is tug at your cutting. So here we are in the potting shed at the bench. I've got a little plastic tray down here on my bench because it helps keep me from making a mess. So again, the rosemary cuttings. The roots are showing nicely. Step 2, pull on the cutting. Don't worry, if it's not rooted, nothing's going to happen. Okay, it'll just slip out. If it is rooted, it's going to resist. If it gives a little bit of resistance, well, back off and wait. Don't push the envelope. These really resist. Okay, they are stuck in here. So, step 3, container upside down, hands between the cuttings to support the soil, so in case it falls apart you can hold it into a clump. Then just go whack like that. Alright, now this is something I've noticed that a lot of novice gardeners are afraid to do, is take the plant out of the pot and have a look. Looking underneath in your potted plants can tell you so much. It'll tell you if your soil medium's wrong because it'll stink. This doesn't. It's sweet and foresty. It'll tell you whether there's too much water because the roots will be brown and rotten, you know. So we have nice light brown color, which is typical of rosemary root growth. Okay, a little whitish to brownish. And so things here are in very, very good condition. This is really just about right, or maybe just even a little bit past, because the roots are circling nicely. So we got a heck of a root ball here, okay? Now, the next thing to do is to take it, put it down on a table like that, and sort of massage the root ball a little bit, okay? And that's going to help push the soil out from in between the cuttings and separate the roots so we don't do so much breaking and ripping, okay? If we shake instead, much of this falls right off, leaves the root system intact. Oh, look, you got a worm! Yeah, I get into everything here. Thank goodness they're not destructive, I'll tell you, because I get into everything. Alrighty, it's coming, we're coming. I'm still shaking and bouncing, shaking and bouncing. You see the motion here. Work it, just like eating jabuticabas, right? Okay, there. And it pulls apart real nice. And here we go. There we go. They come apart. Here we go. Shake, pull, shake, pull, shake, pull, shake, pull. There we go. Ah, look at that. Isn't that a beauty? That's a sweetheart. I like that. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rosemary cuttings. We're in that pot. Next, I have an empty 3.5-inch pot. You could use a 4-inch pot. You could use a 1-gallon pot. It doesn't matter very much. I'm going to add a little bit of soil down in the bottom of this pot so that the roots don't land on the bottom. I'm going to take a cutting. I'm going to place it in here. Kind of spread the roots out a little bit, kind of natural-like. And then I have other 3.5-inch pots filled with soil, so I know exactly how much to put in here. I'm going to shake that in there like that. And then I'm going to press down on it so it firms nicely. We'll use water later on to kind of push this soil down through the roots cutting. Okay, so I left just enough soil in this pot now, you see, because I put some in the first pot, and we just keep moving on down the line like this. Oh, this one's a beauty. Oh, I should charge double for that. Okay, there we go. See that? Goes right inside the pot nice. Shake in some soil. Go ahead and pack it down, right? Because it doesn't necessarily filter right between all those little root hairs. And so by tapping it like this and the packing will make it fall between the root hairs and also stabilize the plant. Ain't that a beauty? Almost ready to sell. Okay, here we go. Number 3. That one's lightly rooted, but it's okay. It'll do. Now let's try the amethyst plants. So here we have our amethyst plants. Nice shade-loving ornamentals, grow really good around here. Great color, great color. Koi is so green that we love. Lots of plants that have colored leaves here. Makes contrast. So we have the roots coming out the bottom here. One thing you want to make sure is that when you see these roots that you don't have weeds in the pots, because oftentimes the roots out the bottom will indicate weeds rather than rooting. In this case, there are no weeds in this container, so these have to be the plant. Let's see here. No. Next step, turn the container over. Don't be afraid. Okay. Yeah, it looks pretty good. We get a nice meshed root ball here. It's not falling apart. I have a feeling some of the cuttings in the pot didn't take. We'll find that out soon, but I'm going to massage this ball here. home, baby. Work it. There we go. There we go. Okay. Well, looking pretty good. Yeah. The cute little guy. Oh, isn't he nice? Yeah, looks good. And just shake and pull, shake and pull, shake and pull. If you shake and pull, you're going to break a lot less roots. I mean, we could just rip this apart, and I'm sure it will grow, but it will grow better if we try to preserve most of the roots that formed. Oh, is that a sweetie? Look at that, huh? A couple of slug bites, but other than the slug bites, it's pretty. Okay, here, yeah, there's another one, really nice. Yeah. See, look, even the cigar-sized wood grows, but not as well as the young pieces, huh? So, question there, you know, when it comes to making cuttings, sometimes a bigger piece of wood works better. Most of the time, the little piece is better. It tends to be more vigorous. Well, that one's pretty good. That's a big, fat, cigar-sized cutting there. It's got a nice root ball on the bottom. All right, so it looks like we had one that completely failed. Yeah, it's all dehydrated. You can see the shrivel lines there on the side of the bark. That's junk. That's a row marker for the garden. Alrighty, so take this little guy, put him in there. Using the tray on the table here makes this a lot easier to clean up, because I'm going to pick my mess up, throw it back into a bag of potting soil after we're done. So I like to use trays to work over. Yeah, another problem with a large cutting like this, it's heavy and it doesn't want to stand up straight. So you have to make sure you tamp it in well, because actually motion in your cuttings is bad. You want your cuttings as stable as possible so that the roots hold and take really well. Very good. Now, the next thing to do is these will require a little bit of fertilizer. They had not been fed when they were struck as cuttings. I never feed my cuttings until I transplant. Okay, so a little bit of fertilizer in that soil naturally, and that was all it took. So what I have here is a combination of some time-release fertilizer and a little bit of phosphorus. The phosphorus will help promote re-rooting, and the rest of the fertilizer will produce a little bit of growth. Now I'm using only a small amount of this stuff because the cuttings are sensitive yet, and you want just a little bit to get their growth started. You don't need a whole lot. Once they have obviously rooted into these containers, then I'll go ahead and begin to apply more fertilizers. Okay, so I'm outside. I do not as of yet have a shade house built. Eventually we will get ourselves a shade house in this place for plants that like shade or new cuttings. But in the meantime, I use the undersides of my tables out here to create shade. That, and I also use my lime and my orange trees over here on the other side of the house for shade. And so we're doing a permaculture natural thing here in the meantime. And so I brought my cuttings out to where they are positioned on near the edge of the bench where the light is subdued, and I am gently putting some water into these containers to settle the soil down around the roots nicely. Over here on this side of the house we are underneath our lime. And you can see down here there are coffee starts. We have all sorts of different plants that are positioned that either like shade or are resting in the shade over here. Most of these are shade lovers. And so we're utilizing the north side of my house with a large eave, and then a couple of good-sized citrus trees over here to help create shade for these plants. And this works fine. So after the cuttings have been transplanted, watered in, you do want to move your cuttings to a place where the light is somewhat subdued for several days, okay? And you move them sort of gradually back out into the sunlight. I usually will keep them in a partially shaded location for about a week or so before I take them and put them up in full sunlight. If they are full sunlight plants, if they're plants that like some shade, well then they'll go to their permanent location where it's partially shady. So finding locations in your yard where you can rest the cuttings is a really good idea. The same kind of light that the cuttings were struck under will be the same sort of light that the transplanting takes place under. The rosemary, of course, is a full sun-loving shrub, and so within a week or so they'll be up here on top of the table with everybody else once they've started to root in. Happy gardening, aloha, and I hope that explains what to do with your cuttings next. The process is just over and over. If you're going to go from the 3-inch pot to a gallon pot, same thing. From the gallon pot to a 5-gallon pot, same thing. There's no difference, just volume size. That's all. It's basically tug the cutting. If it's tight, look for the roots out the drain holes. Turn the pot over, knock it out, have a look. You know, it's really basic. There's not a lot to know about this. It's very, very simple stuff. Happy gardening.